she dropped her champagne, right there, in front of everyone. The glass slipped from her perfectly manicured fingers and shattered on the hardwood, sending golden bubbles and crystal shards flying across the floor. Her mouth fell open, her eyes locked on mine, wide, stunned, like the wind had been knocked out of her. For once my stepmother, Ava, had nothing to say. But to understand why that moment felt so good, let me take you back. Just a few hours earlier, she was smiling. Smiling. My stepmother, Ava, stood there in her white silk dress, diamonds catching the sunlight like tiny weapons. It was my father's funeral, and she looked like she was stepping onto a red carpet. She sipped champagne, yes, champagne, and walked through the cemetery as if she owned it. Technically, she thought she did. I stood near the casket, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles were bone white. The scent of lilies and polished wood clung to the air like grief itself. People came and went, hugging me, murmuring words I couldn't hear. Their eyes were heavy with pity. I was Thomas Hale's only child, and yet somehow I felt like the outsider. Ava, young, poised, and barely older than me, moved through the crowd like she was accepting condolences for a distant colleague, not her husband. I caught Uncle Greg's eye across the sea of black suits. His lips were pressed into a hard line, his jaw tight. He didn't know what I knew. Not yet. When she finally reached me, Ava gave a rehearsed tilt of her head, that fake, soft kind of expression you give when you want people to believe you feel something. Her perfume was sharp and sweet, like flowers wilting too fast. "I'm sorry, Ryan," she said, placing her cold hand lightly on my arm. "I know this must be hard, but you'll understand one day." I nodded, but my throat was tight. I couldn't get words out without choking on them. She leaned in slightly. "Your father adored you, but he wanted to take care of me, too." Another smile. So wide. So fake. Everyone probably thought I was breaking down inside. And in a way, I was. Not because of the money or the will, not yet, but because of how far away I felt from my own father. The last year of his life, I barely recognized him. He changed when Ava came into our lives. She was all charm and sugar at first, until she wasn't. And now, she was standing next to his casket like the leading lady in a play only she had auditioned for. When the service ended, the lawyer asked us to gather in the side room. It was small, quiet. Dusty sunlight filtering through stained glass windows. I sat in the second row. Ava took the front, her champagne flute still in hand. Her leg crossed elegantly over the other, like she was waiting to hear she'd won something. Mrs. Clark, our family lawyer, walked in with the will, her expression unreadable. She cleared her throat and began, line after line. Everything went to Ava, the house, the land, my father's savings, even the lake cabin we built together when I was 12. I stared at the floor. My chest burned. Then Ava turned, leaned back slightly, and whispered, "You'll understand one day, sweetie." But she didn't know what I had found 2 nights ago, hidden in a box beneath the attic floorboards, the first will. And when I pulled it out, she dropped her champagne. Before Ava, it was just me and my dad. We weren't perfect, but we had a rhythm. After my mom died when I was 16, it was like we locked arms and decided to just keep walking forward together. He cooked, terribly. I did laundry. We fixed things ourselves. We had a system, a quiet one, where love wasn't loud, but it was steady. He never missed a birthday. He showed up to every game, even when I was riding the bench. We had inside jokes, weird routines, and the kind of closeness that came from surviving heartbreak side by side. That's what made it so hard to watch it all slip away. Started slow. I came home from college one weekend and noticed the house smelled different. Expensive candles, perfume that didn't belong to either of us. The kitchen was spotless. My dad was humming. "She's something special, Rye," he said, cheeks a little red like a teenager. "Her name's Ava. We met at a charity auction. She makes me feel young again." I smiled politely, but something twisted in my gut. The first time I met her, I swear the temperature in the room dropped. She was beautiful. No denying that. Glossy hair, designer bag, eyes that flicked over me like I was a detail she hadn't planned for. "Oh," she'd said, as if surprised, "you didn't tell me your son was so grown." Her voice was syrupy sweet but cold underneath, like honey poured over ice. Still, I tried. For him. I showed up for dinners, holidays, birthdays. I laughed at her jokes. I listened to her long stories about gallery openings and vacations I hadn't been invited on. But every visit felt like I was being slowly replaced. My dad changed. He dressed better, started talking about selling the lake cabin, said it was too much work. He talked about downsizing, moving somewhere warmer, more modern. That cabin was where we spread Mom's ashes, where we built a dock by hand burning under the summer sun. And he wanted to sell it because Ava wasn't a fan of bugs. I told myself he was just in love, that he'd snap out of it. But the more time passed, the more distant he became. Calls became texts. Texts turned into silence. I'd go weeks without hearing from him. I blamed myself. Maybe I was holding on too tightly. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe I just didn't want to share him. But deep down, I knew. There was something off about Ava. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she had him wrapped around her diamond-covered finger. The last time I saw him alive, he hugged me at the door. It felt shorter than usual. He said, "I'm proud of you, you know that?" "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "I know." But I didn't. Not really. Because 3 weeks later, I got the call from Uncle Greg. Heart attack. Sudden. Gone before the ambulance even got there. The world stopped. I remember staring at the wall, my chest tight, ears ringing. I didn't cry at first. I just sat there, completely numb, like time had paused around me. And then, the very next day, I got a call. It was Ava. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "I just thought you should know." He left everything in order. The house, the accounts, it's all taken care of. I could barely speak. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to know. Not yet. But something about her tone. It wasn't grief. It was confidence. That's when the numbness cracked. Because in my gut, I felt it. I was about to lose more than just my father. Grief has a way of dulling everything until betrayal slices right through it. I thought the funeral would be the hardest part, standing beside my father's casket, trying not to picture his last moments, trying not to wonder if he thought of me, if he knew how much I missed him, if he knew I never stopped waiting for him to come back to himself. But I was wrong. The funeral wasn't the hardest part. The will reading was. It took place in a quiet side room of the chapel. Wood-paneled walls, heavy curtains, and chairs that creaked every time you shifted your weight. The kind of room that smelled like old books and secrets. A dozen or so people had gathered. Uncle Greg, Mrs. Clark, our family lawyer, a few distant relatives and family friends, and of course Ava, my stepmother, sitting front and center like the grieving widow out of a soap opera. She wore a black dress that hugged her perfectly, with a diamond necklace that caught the light every time she moved, a fresh glass of champagne in her hand, her red lipstick untouched, not a tear in sight. She looked like she was attending a premiere, not mourning her husband. She glanced back at me once, smiled, not warm, not apologetic, just pleased. Mrs. Clark stepped forward, opened a leather folder, and began to speak. Her voice was measured and professional, but each sentence landed like a punch to the gut. To my beloved wife, Ava Hale, I leave the house. My stomach sank. The lake property. I stared at the floor, my heart thudding in my chest. All investment and retirement accounts. My jaw clenched, blood roared in my ears. As well as my personal belongings and remaining assets, with the intent she carry forward the legacy of our home. There was no mention of me. Not one line. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Everyone looked at me, some confused, some sympathetic. I caught Uncle Greg's eyes. He looked stunned, like he couldn't quite believe it either. I sat there, frozen. My fingers curled into fists against my knees. The pressure in my chest grew tighter, hotter. I could feel the humiliation crawling over my skin. I wasn't just grieving. I was being erased. And then Ava turned her head ever so slightly toward me. Her voice was a whisper, but it sliced through the silence like a knife. "You'll understand one day, sweetie," she said with the softest, most insincere smile I've ever seen. Like this was all a lesson. Like she was doing me a favor. Her tone made my skin crawl. Like she wasn't just winning. She was enjoying it. And for a second, I felt like everyone else believed her, that I was just some ungrateful adult child clinging to an inheritance that was never mine to begin with, that she was the poor widow just trying to honor her late husband's wishes. But she didn't know. No one did. 2 nights before the funeral, I'd found something buried in the attic. An envelope, yellowed edges. My name scrawled across it in my father's handwriting. Inside it, a letter and a will, the real will. One that said everything Ava now held should have gone to me. I hadn't told a soul, not yet, because I knew this moment was coming, and I wanted her to feel it, every single word. It was 2 days after my father died. The house was too quiet, too still, the kind of silence that hums in your ears, heavy with everything unsaid. I stayed the night after helping sort through some of his things. Ava had insisted she needed space, that I should take whatever time I needed, which was ironic considering she'd already changed the locks and redecorated the living room. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered. I ended up in the attic. It smelled like dust and old pine. Familiar, oddly comforting. The air was thick, warm, filled with the scent of old paper, wood, and the faintest trace of my dad's cologne. That attic was his space, where he kept old tax files, fishing gear, boxes of photos, and the kinds of things you swear you'll throw out someday but never do. I opened a few boxes, not really knowing what I was looking for, maybe a letter, maybe nothing. Then I saw it. Tucked inside a cracked wooden toolbox beneath a folded tarp, a plain envelope, yellowed, the edges curled with age. My name was written on the front in my dad's handwriting, just Ryan. No love, no dear, no date, just my name. I held it for a moment, fingers trembling, heart pounding. The edges were brittle, but the seal was intact. I opened it slowly. Inside were 2 things, a letter and a legal document. I unfolded the letter first. The handwriting was shaky, like it had been written quickly, but it was unmistakably his. Ryan, if you're reading this, then something went wrong. I've been trying to rewrite the new will, but things got complicated. I let someone into our lives who didn't have your best interest at heart. I'm sorry I lost sight of what matters. This house, this land, that cabin, we built them together, you and me. They're yours. I know Ava won't like it, but this is what I want. Don't let her take that from you. I couldn't breathe. The room spun slightly, and I had to sit down right there on the attic floor. My eyes burned, but no tears came. I think I was too stunned. He knew. He knew Ava didn't care about the legacy, about our family, about me. And even if he didn't say it out loud while he was alive, he said it here, in writing, clearly, undeniably. I read the will next. It was dated over a year ago, before Ava ever came into the picture. It listed me as the sole heir, everything, the house, the land, his savings, even that old truck in the garage. It was all supposed to be mine. My fingers gripped the paper like it might disappear if I blinked. For a moment, I felt overwhelmed, grateful, heartbroken, angry all at once. He had tried. In his own quiet way, he had tried to do right by me. And then I felt something else. Focus. A cold, sharp kind of clarity. I didn't scream. I didn't rush to Ava. I didn't post about it or call anyone. I scanned the documents, called Mrs. Clark the next morning, and quietly asked her to confirm if it was still valid. She reviewed everything, twice. Then told me in a calm voice, "This is the most recent legally binding will. If you want to contest the one Ava submitted, you'll win." I paused. "No," I said. "Not yet. Let her read the fake one first. Let her smile. Let her sip champagne. Let her think she'd won. I was going to let the truth speak for itself." I don't remember walking into the will reading. I remember floating. Everything felt slow, dreamlike, almost surreal, like I was watching a movie I'd already seen a dozen times in my head. But this time, it was real. My palms were cold, my spine straight, my face calm. Ava, on the other hand, was radiant. My stepmother sat in the front row, surrounded by people she barely knew, our family's friends, most of whom had only met her a few times. But they were all staring at her like she was the grieving widow of the century. She wore black lace and red lipstick. Her diamond earrings swayed with every confident nod. And in her hand, a fresh glass of champagne, as if she were toasting to victory. I watched her lean over and whisper something to Mrs. Clark. They both smiled politely, but I could tell Mrs. Clark was just waiting for me. The room quieted as the fake will was read. Ava barely blinked. She already knew what it would say, because she helped him write it, or at least she thought she did. Every word felt like a blade pressed against my ribs. To my beloved wife, Ava Hale. A glance toward me, subtle, smug. I leave my home, assets, and all remaining properties to ensure her comfort and care. My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. Ava raised her glass slightly, not to toast, but to sip. She took a long, elegant drink, then looked back at me with that soft, patronizing smirk she wore like perfume. "I know this is hard, Ryan," she said in a voice meant for the whole room to hear. "But your father just wanted me to be secure. You'll understand one day." I smiled. For the first time since the funeral, I actually smiled. Just a little. Just enough. "Actually," I said, slowly standing up, "there's one more document Mrs. Clark hasn't read yet." Every head turned. Even Ava's expression wavered. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out a worn envelope. The original will. Mrs. Clark nodded, already expecting it. She opened the folder gently, unfolding the crisp, yellowed paper, and adjusted her glasses. "This document," she said clearly, "is dated prior to the version just read. It names Ryan Hale as sole beneficiary and overrides the later version. Legally, this is the binding will." Silence. No gasp. No protest. Just Ava, frozen mid-sip. Her hand trembled. The flute wobbled. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Then, crash. The champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood. Gasps echoed around the room. She blinked, mouth still ajar, chest rising and falling fast. Her eyes searched the room for someone, anyone, to come to her defense. No one did. She turned to Mrs. Clark, voice barely holding together. "That can't be right. That's not," he said, "I was supposed to—" Mrs. Clark cut her off gently but firmly. "This is the valid will, Ava. There is no dispute." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The paper in her hand had given her everything. The truth in mine took it all back. Ava looked at me, truly looked, and for the first time, I saw something behind her eyes that hadn't been there before. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of being powerless. She stood, heels clicking sharply as she rushed from the room, broken glass crunching beneath her steps. A trail of champagne and silence followed her, and just like that, the performance was over. I looked down at the envelope in my hands, my father's words, his signature, his intentions, and maybe his apology. He hadn't forgotten me, not really. And now, everyone knew it. Ava never spoke to me again. She tried to contest the will, of course. Filed something within days, claimed it was fake, forged, whatever her lawyer could come up with. But it didn't go far. Mrs. Clark had notarized copies. The original was dated, signed, witnessed. Everything in order, ironclad. Still, Ava didn't go quietly. She lingered in the house for a week longer than she was supposed to, pretending to pack, dragging her heels, calling the press. She even gave an interview, claimed my father had been manipulated, that he wasn't in his right mind when he signed the first will. But deep down, I think even she knew. She had lost. She came in smiling, dressed in diamonds, sipping champagne. And she left in silence. The day she finally drove away for good, I stood by the front window and watched her car disappear down the long gravel drive. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt hollow, like something enormous had ended, but in its place, there was peace. The house was mine now, not just legally, but emotionally, mine to fill again with the things that mattered. The scent of coffee in the mornings, my dad's old jazz records humming through the kitchen, the dusty lake cabin that no one else wanted to deal with. Yeah, I kept that too. I drove up there a week later and found the photo we took when we finished building the dock. I was 12. He had his arm around me. We were sunburned, grinning, covered in sawdust. I put it on the mantle. I didn't keep everything. I sold off some assets, donated a lot, let go of the things that felt like hers. I didn't want the legacy of my father's life to be cluttered with bitterness. I wanted to breathe again in the home we once shared. Uncle Greg still comes by every Sunday. He brings fresh bread from the market and doesn't ask questions unless I bring things up first. I think he knows that some things I'm still unpacking on my own. But I talk to my dad now, not out loud, just in my head, in quiet moments. When I'm watering the garden or fixing a loose floorboard or standing at the dock watching the sunset, I imagine what he'd say. I imagine him apologizing, not for falling in love again, but for forgetting, for losing sight of what we built. I imagine him saying he knew Ava was never going to love this place the way we did, that maybe, in the end, he'd remembered just in time. That will, hidden in the attic, was more than legal paperwork. It was a message, a correction, a kind of whispered, "I'm sorry." People ask me sometimes if I regret not confronting Ava sooner, if I regret letting her believe she'd won. But no, I don't, because what she never understood is this. Winning isn't about having the last word, or the flashiest exit, or the biggest glass of champagne. It's about what lasts. She tried to rewrite my father's story, tried to steal a legacy with her smile and a signature. But stories, the real ones, have a way of surfacing when they need to. And truth? Truth doesn't shout. It waits, quietly, patiently, and when it finally arrives, it doesn't need to break anything. It just lets you watch as the lies fall apart on their own. That day taught me something I'll never forget. Not everything worth keeping can be written into a will, and not everything taken can truly be owned. Some things, like love, truth, legacy, they belong to you, even when the world tries to rewrite the ending. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or had something that was rightfully yours taken away, I see you, and I hope my story reminds you that patience isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the most powerful move of all. If this story hit home for you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, or just that you stuck around till the end. And hey, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true, emotional, and unexpected stories like this one. Because this was just one chapter, and I've got so many more to tell.